conversation. It's questions which I'm going to, may I request for the screen share, please, the PPT?
Yes, Ashu, please go ahead.
So it's going to be mostly like a question, Q&A style, where I would welcome perspectives, I would welcome conversations and sharing from everybody. So when we look at expansive, presence for group transformation, and that is what I am hoping to bring here for all of you today, is a presence that acts as a catalyst to creating awareness. So first thing that I'd really like to put out as a question is, what is, if anybody would like to share their perspective on what is their understanding of the word presence. It is one of the most critical core competencies of ICF, and which is where I'd like to start the conversation from. Anyone? Yes, Winston. Okay. Presence, just being here. Sorry. Okay. Presence is equal to just being here and now, chemistry session, trust between coach and coachee, being there at the moment, be in the moment, being completely present without any baggages. Okay. How do we experience presence? When do we know that we are in the moment, and when does another really get to experience a presence that is without any baggage? Power of now, being aware, being alert and aware. Oh my God, I am, who would like to take over? Be a listener with intention to learn. And I'm going more silence and coachee speaks. Okay, so here I have nobody, I have so many responses, so maybe I should really shut up. But at the cost of being the person today, having to be on, being the speaker, I will ask a question, which is getting provoked, is being a listener to whom and what? Who are you being a listener to when you're being a presence? Being aware, inner and outer. Inner what? Listen to self first and then expand outside. Fabulous. Thank you very much. I myself and coachee. Okay, now this I myself is a little tricky one, but I shall pass it as a typo. And really listening to the self. So what are we? Yeah, I know. I was having some fun. When we are really listening to the self, so really the commitment to any coaching conversation starts with a commitment to awareness, or listening to, or being aware. And often it gets confused with a commitment to creating awareness. And I am bringing this awareness, this distinction up front, because there's a very fine line between, are you committed to being aware? Are you committed to creating awareness? And the minute you get committed to creating awareness, there's an attachment to an outcome, and that jeopardizes the entire conversation. Whereas when you're just committed to awareness, you're committed as an observer to being aware of what's going on in the now. And it is that space of the now that we are really talking about. How present am I to every emotional, the energy in that space. So for any group conversation or any group transformation, the more expanded is the presence, or the more expanded is the awareness or the observer in a coach, the higher is the ability to actually catch every nuance, catch every, be sensitive to the emotions of that many more people in the group. And the only way to really get that and expand the awareness. Now, let's say when we had lots of people talking about being free of my baggage. So what have we really done there to be present? How do I expand my awareness? Any thoughts there? Non-judgmental. How do you get non-judgmental? By practice. Okay. Silencing my mind. Okay. Here, I would like to take the liberty to bring in a little bit of, the mind is my seat of emotions. So what I'm really silencing or getting aware of are the emotions that waver. Self-discipline to once again catch my emotions. Before that is awareness, is presence, or is being flow in presence. But we have to be aware, own balance. So self-discipline to capture your emotions. What space am I in? Am I in a space of egoistic conditioned thinking? Are my conditions or thoughts coming in this space? And therefore being really aware of, being really, really aware of where is every question that I am putting forward in the group coming from? Is it coming from the conditioned mind or those conditioned emotions which want validity, which want recognition, acknowledgement, and they want to look good, they want to be right? Or are they totally free of those conditionings and can be totally fearless? And that fearless trust is what expands the observer. The fearless trust to unleash that observer without that consequence of I could be wrong, maybe I don't know an answer, and really just going with that flow of complete trust in that anchoredness of yourself. Expanding that observer and anchoring into it, there are a lot of self-discipline practices that one can bring in, which one could be really talking about. So here, if I were to, so there are a lot of practices. People use all kinds of practices for expanding the observer, whether it is your meditation practices, yoga. And when we were talking about some of my passions, I would like to, I'd love to share that. Lately, I have chosen to join theater purely to get past my hesitation of just saying what I want to and not being at all looking at what could anybody be thinking. It's something, there's a fearlessness, but unleashing in front of the camera, unleashing in front of any audience. Oh, it's an absolute different level of fun that I'm having right now. I would love to share some, scenarios where done a lot of group coaching, and that's why I've taken this forward here today. Is we were working with, as I would, one of the when we, as a president, we were doing group coaching for Give India, and we had now an optimal size of a group coaching is preferably anything between 10 to 12, or I would say 15 at max, to expand yourself. But even when you have about 22 or 25, I think the difference that comes is, am I making myself responsible as a coach to being a catalyst for everybody, or am I am I absolutely understanding that the group energy itself is a catalyst to change and transformation? And that's where the letting go comes in, because I am all right to dip into that group energy, because the more you encourage the group sharing, the more there are others who pick up and those insights, and the circle keeps going on. So, we had about 22, 25 participants at Give India. And I remember there was this one coachee one of the participants who was rather one picked up on the fact that he was very agitated with the fact that the organization does not always listen to his ideas or acknowledge his ideas. So I just asked him on a lark, I said, how many of your ideas do get picked up? And he said anything like between 10 and 20 out of 100. So I don't even know where the thought came from. And I asked him, I said, do you know how many ducks Sachin Tendulkar did before getting 200 centuries or low runs? And, it was like a penny just dropped. And that analogy hit home for him to say that, what should I be more focused on? Those ideas that are getting validated by the organization or those that are getting rejected? And that immediate acknowledgement to himself created a vibe of acknowledgement within the team that I'm just possibly stuck with the negative. Now, in that moment, picking on that, who picked on that nuance or that insight is the trick of really shifting the group energy and saying, is there anybody who has faced a similar sense of rejection and would like to either share it or is feeling in a shift with it? And there are always one or two people who will talk about a shift for themselves from there. And that's how the group then moves. And, I was working, I remember, I'll state another example where there was another group I was working with where we had, the energy was really heavy. It wasn't budging. And somewhere towards it, the part of the session, I said, the energy here is there. I'm sensing so much fear in the room that I really don't know how to move forward. And I can promise you these corporate leaders were not happy hearing that. The session, we broke for tea and I said, okay, I would like everybody to reflect on this and come back. And one of them walked up to me and said, Ashu, you've always been known to be very perceptive, but I'm sorry, you're really wrong here. And I said, okay, may I ask what prevented you from saying that in the full forum? And, I said, okay, if you believe I'm wrong, okay, let's leave it at that. I'm good to accept that. And I just let go of that thought. But lo and behold, a month later, the CEO called me and told me that they did this kind of a workshop yet again. And the next the coach had an exactly same reaction to them. And that is where it's okay to let go of not being right or being perceived as wrong or, having upset somebody. Fact is, I believed in what I said, and yet I was okay with it. And I think that's where the transformation, even if the penny dropped a month later, it did not matter to me. Now, with working with any group, there are always some emotional boundaries that I set into place. And when I start with the group, because one of the most fundamentals for creating change in a group is respect and trust, or safety, I would say. That safety that we coaches create on a one-on-one basis. For a group, it requires emotional boundaries of one, putting in some rules like that I have the privilege of calling a timeout if there is too much of if two people disagree too much or the conversation gets too aggressive. I have again reserved the right to putting questions on parking lot. So I have it took initially when I started doing groups, it did take a little courage to stand in front of leaders who were way more successful in my perception and really call a timeout or say, can we put this on parking lot? But the respect one earned because of really doing that and calling a timeout because it just wasn't working there is what really makes it work. Making sure everybody starting a conversation on, so there's some rules like starting a conversation on acknowledgements. having the group acknowledge as many people as they can. If it's a team of coaches, if it's a corporate team, you can get everybody to acknowledge. If it's an diverse group of people, you can get them to share a little about themselves. But it's really firstly bringing in that positive acknowledging energy, or what one may call the appreciative energy, to set the ball rolling and bring in that comfort and trust and safety to saying, there's nothing wrong with me, and I have the inner capability to change and the strength to transform because I possess 1, 2, 3. And once you bring in as many acknowledgements or values or strengths around, the change really just happens from there, because you've firstly got in that whole energy there. Then comes the next thing of really saying, okay, what would we like to aspire for here? Contextually, constantly staying with the context becomes one more very, very critical part of it. How focused and how aware am I of bringing that context back again and again and again? To keep that context alive is what makes the transformation occur. So every time it digresses, bring it back. And on this note, I'm going to take a pause and ask if we have any questions or any thoughts that people would like to share. What's emerging for you all as you hear this? Or if people would like to share, where have they done some group coaching, and what has been their experience or learning that they'd like to share with the group? Hi, anybody?
So I see a silence. So let me ask a question, Ashu. So it's very easier, said than done, to say that be fearless and not be judgmental about yourself, go with unknowns. But when you are actually in front of your client and that CEO is paying big bucks to you, there are expectations from the organization. How do you actually become fearless in that situation?
I would ask to put differently, how do I not be fearless is my bigger problem. But really putting it, it's really a question of who am I committed to? And I'll come back to, that's why I started with, am I committed to awareness, or am I committed to recognition, acknowledgement? Am I committed to looking good? And that's the part one has to keep working on. So expanding your presence requires a huge amount of self-work at all times. It is not something that happens in that moment. It's not. So coaching presence is not a presence that occurs in that moment. It's a presence as a human being. And it's a presence, I would put it, as a coach or as a human being that I'm bringing alive there in the coaching, in that space. And that self-work, which happens in the back all the time, whether it is dealing with, understanding my own emotions, understanding my own barriers that come in the way, understanding my triggers, understanding the fears.
And can I ask a question?
Sure. Can I just finish the thought for a moment? Hi, whoever that was, bear with me for a second. It's that self-discipline which you unleashed there. Yeah, go ahead. Who was that?
That is me, MG, exactly the same point which I was trying to interrupt you on.
Okay.
It is more important to be authentic in front of your group, at times even showing a vulnerability, or be focusing so much on self-discipline about being non-judgmental. As human beings, we are wired on a daily basis. We keep judging every alternate thing. Suddenly you're on a stage and we decide not to be judgmental or discipline yourself to be aware. I mean, let's be fair to ourselves. Is it more easy to be authentic and be who you are and strike a spontaneous relationship with the group, which will trigger more energy in the group rather than be worried about your own self-awareness and discipline.
Okay. So thank you for that. And I would like to, okay, authenticity for me is not that I am one person outside my room and another person in front of the client. I am the same person you'll experience in both interactions. And when I say discipline, it is more to do with the self-work that has been happening at all times. Am I vulnerable? Oh, absolutely. Are there times I may not know? Completely, and which is why I talk about unleashing and using the group energy. And am I absolutely okay to say, I don't know, would somebody else like to share a perspective? Completely, because there are times I may not have a sense of relatedness. There are times I may not have an answer to it. There are times I may completely go blank and not even have a question in my mind, and I'm okay with that. And that is where you come. The minute you are okay with it is how you're able to come back to that moment of be back you're in the present, saying, I don't know, I don't have a question for you. So where the difference comes in, and what I'm really coming at, is where the awareness or the presence goes away is when in that moment a coach judges themselves for not knowing, or for not getting it right, or for not knowing a question, or for not having a perspective. It's absolutely okay. So authenticity and is, so a big challenge comes in when people believe I'm a coach in the room and I am somebody else outside. You are the same human being. The effort to be somebody else is what creates the challenge. If there is a lot of self-work, there is no effort when you're in front of everybody else. A team with their CEOs, because they've experienced you the same way outside, and there is no inauthenticity to that. So that's why I said, am I known to be fearless? Yes. When I work with clients, they know what they're asking for is unleashing a person who's going to probe hard and provoke hard, who's going to challenge, but who's also going to be sensitive to the energy dipping. So, I was listening to a webinar yesterday by ICF Mumbai. Was it yesterday or day before? And there was this question where often coaches wonder, how do we work with when a client gets stuck? Stuckness too is an emotion. It exists with you and me. Am I willing to honor the stuckness? And that's really when I'm willing to honor the stuckness is when you get unstuck. It's when you question or judge the stuckness is when the stuckness, that sticky, it becomes a stickiness actually, because you've just gone into an emotional loop. And that's what expansive presence is really about. Are my projected emotions withdrawn, or are they out there hanging there in that space?
Ashu, I have a question. Bobby here.
Yep.
See, the way I understand what you said was, only a coach who is always willing to say what is in his mind fearlessly can do a group coaching better than a coach who is bothered about what people think about him if he says something. Is that the way to understand it?
Okay. I'm going to be a little picky here and say it's not in the mind. Are you willing? How aware are you, and what is your awareness telling you? So how deeply trusting are you in the voice of awareness, and how much can you bring that in front? is how expansive you can be or effective you can be. So it's not, and when I use the word fearless, is more about the fearless trust. So can I have really trust my intuition to the point, or that gut, to the point of saying something or asking a question without necessarily, that what we call that knowingness or that gut. Can I really trust that sense of knowingness and just go with it? And that's what I mean by fearlessness.
I had the same thing in mind. I'm saying, like you told about the CEO example.
Yeah.
If I have a question, or if I have to confront the CEO or challenge the CEO, I'm doing it with complete awareness that I may not get the contract next time. I may actually the same moment, and I'm willing to take it.
Okay.
And that sort of a person can handle a group coaching better than a person who is bothered about what comes to his bank every day, if he does anything like that.
Okay, so let me put it as, whether it's group or individual, that sort of person can handle, not handle coaching in general. I mean, because the minute you're bothered about yourself, coaching is not about you. So you are bringing that same attribute in a more expanded form.
True.
So absolutely. So the effectiveness as a coach comes from that space of trust.
Fair enough. Yeah, I got the answer.
Yeah. So go ahead. Who's that? Sorry.
Ashu, hi, this is Rekha here.
Hi, Rekha.
I had a question. I don't know if I'll be able to put it in the right way or not at this moment. Has there been any instances where there's been a brief introduction in a group coaching, and there is suddenly a whole lot of silence, which is there? What's happening to you as a coach? Can you share some your experience about it, and how do you really bring those energy back in the group?
Okay. I will share two instances where
Sure.
One was when I was with the chapter and we were working with an NGO, and there was a lull in the room. And we were working with, I think, team building. Yes, I remember we were working with team building. And when there was a lull in the room, it was like, for a moment, one is a little confused. But in that confusion, I think it was like being silent to see, what am I missing?
Mm-hmm.
And what I realized was that I was attached to building the team. The team was very much in place. I needed to push the team to say, hey, you are already aligned and collaborative. How can you create from here? And the minute I recognized that element,
Right.
First is identifying that there is a lull in the energy, and instead of instead of pushing it on the audience necessarily, it's saying, okay, what can I do with this lull? What is it due to? And when I tabled the fact that I said, the more and more I'm picking up is that this team is already working collaboratively together. What would you like to create from this space of collaboration? There was such a difference in the energy, because I had actually validated what they were sensing but not articulating.
Okay.
And there was a shift from, and it was, and this very similar instance, so this was with Give India, and they actually said, came up with, we'd like to move from I to we, and from me to, from Bombay to India. So they expanded their whole vision in that moment, from being limited to I to we, and we got a fabulous testimonial from the CEO on exactly those lines, which was, so fulfilling as a coach, because you've just leapfrogged the entire audience into another space. Because from there, they were willing to expand and challenge themselves to multiply, using the same processes that they had successfully used for Mumbai to all India. Okay. Similarly, I worked with a client recently where, we've got into a little bit of a squabble of when I said, okay, so they said, we need to engage more. I said, okay, so are you all not engaging? And suddenly when I said, okay, so are you all not engaging? What's stopping you all? And suddenly, one by one, there were 8 of them. They all kept piping up, hey, but I talk to you, I talk to you, I talk to you. So they practically got into a little bit of a fight, justifying to each other. One does get thrown off for that moment, but I think the fact that the leaders themselves take responsibility for standing up for themselves, you have done half your work already for provoking that awareness in them. And from that awareness, it's literally then jumping forward and saying, okay, you are doing it, but you're not aware of it, and you're not making it, you're not systematically working, really enhancing or expanding that sense of engagement. And that itself took them leapfrog them. So does it happen? Yes. It's getting yourself back into them, with them in that space.
Thank you so much for sharing.
So, and it's a lot to do with, once again, acknowledging them. So, Rekha, it's about really acknowledging them for what they're already doing, but possibly unaware because nobody has put them in a room together.
Sure.
And at that moment, that's really what I did for them. I said, one doesn't sit back and make the time to sometimes just acknowledge the work we are already doing. And this is your space to acknowledge yourselves and say, we are already doing it. How can we now, as a team, be conscious of it and do more of it or make the most of it? And having a third person, I think for any of us, receiving that acknowledgement is most fulfilling and is the biggest catalyst to change.
Sure.
And you've got their trust, you've got their respect, and you've respected the leader in them. You've acknowledged that leader, that possibility in them.
Okay.
The other thing comes with, there's another thing that is, in a group, how comfortable are you calling out what you are sensing? It's one thing where there is safety in a one-on-one coaching. Now think of calling out and asking difficult questions in a group scenario. And here comes there is a seeking permission is one of the most, is the biggest one that I would say at that point. You have to really, really, firstly step forward, recognize, you're going to say, can I ask you a question? Do I have your permission to make you uncomfortable? Are you okay with it? I know that I will in front of everybody. May I ask a question that's emerging for me and it may make you uncomfortable,
Sure.
uncomfortable. And if you have the permission, and more often than not, recognize that leaders are so ambitious and success driven. You are pretty much calling out on you are actually playing on that weakness. And I'm really putting it that way. You're playing on that weakness by asking permission. Can I probe deeper or challenge you or ask you something? And I will, of course, I do always say, I'm okay if you don't wish to respond. I'm okay. Maybe I'm wrong. It's okay. But can I take the risk? And I would say 90 or 95 to 1, I have never had it go wrong. But it all depends on A, taking that permission. B, I do always tell the rest of the participants that what I'm doing with him, recognize that it's all of you are in the same place, and I may come to you in the next question. So I would really appreciate if everybody would respect the fact that he's willing to be vulnerable just now. And we all stand in his, in that space of courage for him. That itself gives the person, instead of discomfort, a huge amount of, you have effectively applauded his courage for being vulnerable, and that shifts the space right away. The third thing is being really sensitive to who you are asking this question. Have I gone wrong? Yes. I apologize and pretty much bow out after that on that question. But being sensitive. So in any group scenario, there'll be the aggressors and there'll be those who'll be quiet and be waiting and watching. But then you'll always have some supporters in a team. It's being sensitive to who are those more likely to be supportive and who are likely to be disruptive and who are likely to be quiet. So once you're able to get a sense of that, it's a question of then working with that energy or really being strategic to who do you partner with in the group and say that, can I partner with you to help this group moving? And it often works. And if some people in the group have been quiet too long, it's also being aware that there are some taking too much airtime and there's some getting no airtime.
Sure.
So yeah, there's a balance. And at that, I'll stop here and see who would like to get some airtime here now.
Thank you for sharing, Ashu.
You're welcome. Pleasure. Okay. All right. So should I assume there are no questions or thoughts here?
Not many messages in the group right now. So I guess people are listening more.
Yeah.
Or maybe thinking more and not putting in the chat box.
I will go with one of the tricks that I use. I'll share. When I do a group coaching, I firstly keep, thank you for that, Jai Shankar. I firstly keep I keep bowls of chocolates. Those who are having more, they could be either just munching or just really anxious. And it's a cue for being sensitive to that. And I'm really sharing tricks here. The other thing I do is I give squeezy balls. It helps people with, that fidgetiness, that restlessness that it is inside the person when the whole group is getting provoked. They need something. It's that restlessness that you're coping with in that moment. And I have had instances where there were some squeezy balls that were mutilated beyond recognition. There were some that were used to just playfully throw around, and those who are playfully throwing around are your partners. And those who are really mutilating the daylights out of it, wait till they're ready to be questioned. Respect that space of restlessness. And it's these little tricks as a coach, and this was in my early days. Would I still need to do I still do that? Not really necessarily. But when I started out as a coach, it's something that I picked up from when I did my coach training with Coach U. They would give us, these pipe cleaners, smoking pipe cleaners. And by the evening, everybody had made so many shapes out of it that they were unrecognizable, or some people were just artistic about it. Now, I didn't even know where to source them in those days when there was not so much there was no Amazon in India. And that's how I went about buying these smiley balls and balls with all those squeezy stuffs. And it gradually helped me build my awareness. See, what am I really doing? I'm using those props to build my awareness of the energy in the room. Because it's the energy in the room that I am really working with, and how is it impacting me? It's working through with that one really works, that one is looking to say, am I alert to what's going on? And if I see it needs a break, I take a break, I give a break. And here, money, do you need a break? Is it getting too, is the energy?
I have a question. I have another question to you, Ashu. But what about your vulnerability at that moment?
Go ahead. Sorry, be a little more elaborate.
What was really happening to you at that moment? You know, what kind of emotions as a coach that you were undergoing?
You know, if I say I go back 10 years or 8-10 years, I would say I was rather aware that I was more conscious of that I hope they don't disrupt the session, and I'm sensing it. And I hope I can manage it. But today, I think it's, you know, it's years where you get more comfortable and expanded with it, and you learn how to actually have fun with it or flow with it, and it doesn't impact. And am I okay saying it's getting heavy? Can we take a coffee break? Yes, I would do that if I have to.
Sure.
Thank you. Yeah. Because can the energy sometimes get really negative and difficult? Yeah, I would. And I would ask the CEO, is there something I don't know that's happening here? Because I remember in one of the sessions, I did step out to speak to the CEO to say, there's something I'm sensing which is going on. And yeah, there were people who didn't know they were going to be laid off possibly. And there were rumors. So you have, you know, you pick it up, you see what best you can do.
Sure. Thank you.
Ashu, hi, this is Arvind here.
Yeah, Arvind, hi.
I just had a reflection. You know, when I started the group coaching myself a few years back, you know, the more pressure I put on myself about that I am responsible for an outcome, the more difficult it got.
Correct.
The more open I got as experience came about let it evolve and let me be curious and, you know, open about it, and let me not put this responsibility on myself on that I have to make something happen, something must happen because I am there, I'm being paid, etc., etc. So I think the secret is really to be curious and open and let it flow. Just be around to, you know, make it go to the place where the group wants it to flow, and something will come out.
Thank you for that, Arvind.
Yeah.
Would anybody else like to share here? Thank you so much, Arvind, for setting the ball rolling on that. I'm going to choose this moment to really stay silent and let whatever question or whatever transformation or whatever's occurring here occur, and then pick it back. So the question I've put here, and I'm coming back, and this silence that I used was really the silence sometimes one needs to bring forward in a group. And And it's okay to just stand back and say, what's emerging here?
So I will speak, in this silence, I see maybe a little loss of energy, or I don't know, people are thinking and they're not writing.
So let me ask, what is causing this? What is it that you all were expecting that may not have been delivered here? It's the inner work you called us out to do.
Ashu, I will be bold, and let me tell you this. I would have liked you to be a little more vulnerable and show your vulnerability here. If you had said that, look, the silence is a little uncomfortable for me, I would have loved it. Because I would have felt uncomfortable in a client group if for 5 minutes people didn't talk. I would love to know what's going on there. But maybe you're more courageous. You're waiting to endure that silence,
Oh, thank you for that. Okay. So the very fact I asked, okay, so here is where the question so thank you. So was I wondering, am I not delivering it right? I asked the question. And I think I was totally vulnerable in asking that question. And I was okay asking that question. And that's the vulnerability that I bring forward in the group, is asking, am I not, is there something in my, are you expecting differently? Because that's what the silence, when he said the energies dropped, okay, maybe the silence for me was a comfortable silence, but if it was uncomfortable for everybody else, I'm absolutely willing to take responsibility for it and say, is there something I didn't fulfill here?
So suddenly there is a flurry of messages.
And yes, so is it difficult to work on oneself? Yes, it is. However, have I invested years and hours in myself? I would say yes, I have. Have I failed at times? Oh, of course, I'm human. But I think it's a fact that every moment is a moment of learning, and that gives me the joy to get back.
So, Ashu, can I come in here?
Yep.
Yeah, it's a question of perspective and how one is comfortable with silence.
May I ask, who am I speaking to?
And this is Amit here.
Hi, Amit.
Yeah, so it's a question of how you condition yourself to silence. For one, I'm happy to be silent. The coachee is also silent. That's a space at times you need for people to reflect and work on. And as long as you recognize that you are, you accept that you can be comfortable and also make the coachees comfortable, I think it's fine to be in that space. That's my perspective.
Thank you, Amit. I think the challenge sometimes comes when you're in front of a group. See, what happens is, and I think that's where the question really, that's where the flurry of things came from. And I see lots of validation on it. Thank you so much. One-on-one, you feel less judged. One to many, the fear of being judged is more. Let's be candid on that. And that's where it's really building that inner reserve to be okay when you choose. It's making a very conscious choice to be silent and say, okay, let's observe what's going on here. Am I missing something? And I could have missed something, and I'm okay with that. And I could have brought, and I, for all I know, I may have even brought in this silence too late here in the conversation today. I even tabled that in front of all of y'all. I possibly did, but I wouldn't know. But fact is, I tried. And I think it's that trying, being curious with myself, that trying that I really bring forward in any group, is saying, okay, I tried, and it provoked, and it changed the energy. It got people moving again. It got people thinking again. So it served.
Ashu, this is MG once again.
Yes.
One last question from me. I was the one who asked you about being authentic some time back.
Yes.
In a group as compared to an individual coaching, somehow I have always been thinking that the chemistry between the coach and the group and the spontaneity of relationships is very important, because you don't know what's coming. In a one-on-one coaching, generally you're not having too many surprises, like which hit you like an iceberg. Here's in a group coaching, there's sudden shift in the energy of the team. Things can happen which will require more spontaneity in your relationship with the coach. I have found that is best to react on the spur of the moment and be what you are. And
correct.
It helps you tide over the issue.
Absolutely. I wouldn't agree with you more on this one, because it's who you are. I mean, you're bringing yourself forward in your wholeness.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Ashu was here. I have a question. So it might not be group, but this is some discomfort I personally had when I'm coaching in a non-present way, right? In a remote way, where somebody is on a phone, where I can't see person, and there is a silence, and sometimes even the silence that we have agreed to be silent for a couple of minutes. When things don't come back in that time, I kind of start feeling, is the person really present, and is he gone into his mail? Is he doing what? Those kind of questions come to me. It might not be just in the group context, but I do a lot of one-on-one coaching remotely on phone. So I'm a little uncomfortable. While I'm personally very comfortable with silence, but in a coaching setup, sometimes I get very uncomfortable with silence. Would you throw some light on this?
How comfortable are you expressing your discomfort?
I am quite comfortable, and I'm okay. I'm quite vulnerable too. I accept, and yeah. So I don't think it is anything to do with my discomfort, but I think this thing in my head goes like, okay, we have started thinking about something, so we give the space a little bit of time. But then if the time becomes a little more than what I expect to be, then I start wondering, is this person gone off into his mail?
Okay, I'll ask my question again, and I'm sorry I'm repeating myself. If you're comfortable with expressing your discomfort, do you share that discomfort with the coachee?
Yeah, I did in a couple of occasions.
So what are you asking me here, therefore?
So I'm asking, so the silence, the topic on silence, how different it is in physical coaching setup versus electronic coaching method.
Okay. It's no different. All of y'all right now are remote for me. I can't see anybody's faces except Nitin. So let me ask you, how comfortable have you been being silent all this while?
I was comfortable. I started thinking what are the questions to ask, and got a little reflective on what I expected, what did I get, is there something that I have to ask, because presence is a very important thing for me, and I kind of understand more from people. So so I was processing that, and I was very comfortable with this.
So that's it. My answer. That's really it. It's really the same. What do you get out of, as you respond, what answer comes to you?
So I think what you said is, how comfortable are you with silence is something which I need to mull over, because probably in some of the situations I did get discomfortable when the silence was a little longer than expected. So I think I should be asking the question to myself or to the participant to see what did the silence invoke. Some leading questions like that would help, I think.
Yeah. So when I went silent, and here is where I'll share my experience. When I went silent and I felt the dip in energy too, is when I put a question in the chat box. And Nitin picked that up and voiced it. And that's the tango we played.
Mm.
So I expressed my, call it discomfort, out there. And it created its own set of dialogue there. It's a space of not knowing. I walked into it self-creative completely. It's totally a space of not knowing. And I didn't know what will emerge out of it.
Yeah, I can sense that you are open to being vulnerable also.
So what emerged is I have a beautiful set of, if the group is not aware of coaching, will silence add value? I've had a lot of questions here, a lot of thoughts here. That's what emerged out of the silence. I didn't know what would emerge. And if the group is not aware of it, I'll pick that question and respond, will the silence add value? It's when you've used it, how you've used it, and why are you there? You're there because as a coach. So, Murugan, I mean, let me understand if you have put that silence forward, saying, I'd like to give everybody a moment to reflect. There's a context that's been set, which gives people time to reflect. And that's what makes the silence more, I mean, for lack of a better word, more pregnant with meaning. It's the context. So let me ask here, now that we are really up on the hour and Nitin is looking at his clock and I can see that he is getting impatient. Nitin, are you willing, do we need to close or do I have time for a question?
I think I want to respect time from everyone,
Okay.
and we're already 3 minutes over.
Yeah.
So I would give a last question. If somebody has a last question, I will give one question at a time, and then we'll close it. You can unmute yourself and ask questions, or you can just go. I guess people are still in thinking mind.
Okay, so Mani, you've asked a question here and I will pick that if I could take the liberty that can there be a coaching session like wisdom listening sessions where neither the coach nor the coachee talk and yet transformation happens? I would throw the question back at all of y'all if anybody has experienced any transformation in their silence today. I know that when I went silent, I would like to know at that time if anyone experienced any transformation. It may happen, it may not. It really, again, depends on the context in which you both are sitting silent.
Yes,
And some people, thank you for that.
Okay, I have one point maybe on silence. If I was managing the silence, like if I've created space, silent space for me and the coachee, then I would be very comfortable with that. But if the silent space happened without my knowledge as a coach, I would perhaps feel a little uncomfortable.
Sure, I understand. Appreciate it. Absolutely appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you for sharing. Thank you for being vulnerable. Thank you, everybody. This has been a really robust session. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ashu. You have put people in a lot of reflective mode. I hope people got value out of these sessions. And we are looking for a next session tomorrow from Saima that will talk about what are the key issues in coaching, group coaching today. Thank you, everyone, for joining in, and thanks a lot, Ashu, again.
Thank you, Nitin, and thank you, Bangalore chapter. That was really fun for me.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.